Fantastic.
Okay, we're going to be live here in a second. And we're live. And let me put the disclaimer up, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And share screen. Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'd like to open up the Capital Improvement Committee meeting at 17:37 pursuant to Governor's Baker, March 12th, 2020, order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 38, subsection 18. This meeting of the Capital Improvement Committee and the meeting immediately following of the Finance Appropriations and Advisory Committee will be conducted in total or in part via remote participation. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at dudleyma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: via YouTube Live and/or posted link at www.dudleyma.gov. Now I'd like to ask everybody to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I think to start this off with department head requests, and we'll go ahead and start with the Highway Department. Mr. Murray, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good. So tell us a little bit about this.
Okay. So do you, okay. So to start out with, for this year's,
2021,
for 2022.
2022.
We have, that we've projected two of the large dump trucks, cab chassis models, for replacement to upgrade, two of the existing vehicles. And, so a, body from an existing truck would be swapped over onto one of the new vehicles with this plan. So the all-season bodies that exist on the trucks right now, they're stainless steel bodies, so they would certainly be a good option to go with the cab chassis model.
Okay.
So again, there's two of those, 150,000 each is the estimated cost for that. And then projecting out likewise over the next 5-year period, we'd be looking at likewise to update those consecutively in the same type of manner. The next item that we'd be looking at would be the Brine system. Presentation was given to the selectmen on that. And basically that would be, would give the Highway Department the ability to create its own liquid brine system for pre-treatment of the roadways for snow and ice control. Would kind of bring us up into the realm of what, the technology that's moving forwards in a lot of the surrounding areas. There's been, some other towns in the area that have moved towards this, and cost for that would be approximately $110,000 to do that. So just lost my screen. Is that?
Are you done with the Brine,
Yes.
Jeff?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can we move on to, the clamshell for catch basin cleaning, Jeff?
Okay.
An upfit of an existing chassis?
Okay. So currently, the highway department has a Johnson multi-unit that was originally set up as a sweeper and vac unit for catch basin cleaning. The intention would be to retrofit that with a clamshell cleaner, and it's a more practical system for basin cleaning. The existing unit is somewhat aged and not very effective for doing that. And to stay in step with what we need to do for the MS4 surface water stormwater management program with catch basin cleaning, the suggested thing would be to go with a clamshell cleaner and a dump body. And the cost for that to retrofit the existing truck would be $120,000.
Okay.
Do you have
And
the
then-
screen back?
Yeah, I got the screen back. So then moving forwards from there, again, in sync with what would be projected for the next 5-year period would be yearly to set aside $15,000 or to budget $15,000 for guardrail replacement. And there's various areas where there's hazards that exist with guardrail that's been either broken or aging, that in various different types of guardrail. There's some concrete where rebars showing through in dangerous areas on grade where those need to be removed and replaced. And then there's any number of different types with steel or a combination of both. So again, that'd be budgeted through $15,000 yearly for this year through 2030.
Okay.
The street sweeper was previously purchased, but
So, Mr. Chairman, if I can interrupt for 1 second, the final thing on this capital improvement request, I'm going to ask, it's the new coating, the rubberized coating at the playground here at the DMC. This should be senior. I don't know why it says junior there. That's a little premature. Is going to be moved to the municipal complex request. So we can remove that from the highway request if that's all right with the committee. And switch
Okay.
it back to the municipal.
Okay.
Do we want to go over what has, Rich, through the chair, do we want to go over what has been completed for 21? Such as the loader and the sweeper?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So fiscal 21, we pay off the paver, we're paying off an ambulance, we're 1/3 payment on the roof, the HVAC system, and the LED streetlights. We have a 1/5 pay down coming up or made this year on the highway sweeper for $225. We also have a highway loader. Now, the town of Dudley took a loan in anticipation of the state reimbursement. So technically we borrowed the money, but we're going to get paid at the end when the state settles up with us. We always want to hold open the, the receivable by having sort of a bridge loan there. There's also the ambulance that was borrowed for in earlier part of the year.
Okay.
So
We all saw that.
we can go back to that if we need to.
Yeah, could you go back to that, Rich?
No, Mr. Chairman, let's take 10 seconds. We have the highway superintendent.
Sure.
We'll get to him. We'll talk about what's out there, what's coming up. I don't have an issue finishing the CIP meeting or the FAA meeting with a review of the sheet that was up there. But for
Okay.
continuity's sake, we'll have the superintendent finish his presentation. We'll ask the questions, he'll provide the answers, and we'll go almost to the next department if we could. That sheet I could talk an hour on. That doesn't say much. I had talked 20 minutes on a Geico commercial, so.
So, yeah, just getting back to the load of the chapter 90 funds. Again, Rich mentioned there's basically a bridge loan. The chapter 90 funds are going to cover the cost of the loader 100%. So those were.
So we
That
wanted
was
to talk at some point, we're going to discuss sources of funding, like Jeff just brought up. How do you prefer to proceed, Mr. Chairman? You want to talk about the source of the funding for all the requests and the priority of the funding, or do you want to move on to the next department?
May I ask a question?
Please.
Through the chair, we have $15,000 for guardrail replacement, and that's something chapter funds doesn't cover. Jeff?
No, so basically we're budgeting for that, but it's kind of an unknown. We can ask for reimbursement through chapter funds, but that's always at the discretion of the state. So they do have and just while we're on the subject too, with the chapter 90, they have put a new system into place for making requests. They still do the awards by paper or reimbursement through paper, but a request is done now fully electronically, or it will be by the end of this month. It was supposed to go online on the 15th of the month, but it's now going to go live on April 1st. So myself and the foreman both went through a training with the UMass Extension that put on a little tutorial with that. So should streamline the process a little bit as far as submitting requests. But getting back to the budget too, they were, I guess, there's a couple of things that we've skipped over too with, there's two pickup trucks, or two small trucks that we had put in on the request, or, had up there for a replacement pickup for the foreman. And that was budgeted at $39,000, I believe. And then another rack body truck for the building and grounds. And that was budgeted at $49,000. So if you scroll down the page slightly, you'll see those two items. Back I believe just above the guardrail. Should be just above the guardrail replacement. Shown in the 20.
That's 69.
Right, yeah. Back a little further up the page. So 2022, there's a stake body truck for $49,000. And that'd be a replacement truck for picking up trash, taking care of the parks, rail trail, beach, pulling around lawnmowers, stake body truck with a a lift gate and a snow plow. And then again, the one following that, the 39,000, that would be a replacement for the highway foreman. And that'd be a F-250 pickup truck with a snow plow.
So to answer your question earlier, Mr. Administrator, I would like to do that, each department to go over the priority of each and the source of funding.
Okay.
Okay, we start with we've created this capital plan, and we're gonna start with a baseline of what we have on the page so far in terms of when it was due for replacement. I think the most important overall thing right now that we have to focus on is sticking as closely to a capital improvement plan year after year as we possibly can. So my suggestion is not to deviate from the plan, but we have to also be realistic in terms of what is going to be funded and what the source of funding is going to be. And instead of deferring or removing, we'll try to arrange this so that it makes sense for the town for fiscal year 22. So Mike, that's my clumsy way of saying, let's stick with the program, but choose our priorities and sources of funding going forward.
Okay.
First we can say that we completed 21, so that'll be removed from the plan. We did the loader in 21. And we had a sweeper on here. Was that 20 or 21? I'm seeing it.
I think it was listed under 20.
It's 20.
Okay. So this highlighted in pink, Rich, is slated to be removed. Well, it's been completed. We'll report to the capital improvement committee that it's
Sir.
complete.
If I may, we started with the original, and the way I envision the tab working is to have 2 previous years. And then one of the tabs on here is existing debt. And in my mind, if we're on the second year of a project, we know if someone's new to the committee, whether it be the FAA or the capital improvement, you almost have a warm lead in. Well, what did we do last year? Instead of somebody getting an elbow at a meeting, here are the 2 previous fiscal years, here's the current year, and then you're moving forward. It's an Excel spreadsheet. We're not going to run out of room. I'm happy to maintain it and to make sure that we don't have things that are in the way administratively. When you're looking at this is sort of busy. We'd be able to sort this out after everything's been accepted, and we'd get a neater, cleaner presentation, knowing what the next couple of years is, because everything on here goes to the townwide capital planning. And that's really the key of all of this. The idea that, well, what do we need for, my heart's stopping, what are you doing?
You're muted, Jay.
Very fine.
So the whole idea is that you'd have a little bit of a lead up, because at one point there's going to be a department that's going to have a larger request. You put a fire station in, that almost leads the page. A lot of things for the highway, the modal price, high 100,000s, maybe 200. So we'd be able to put something like that in there. So if no one really objects, I kind of like the idea of having the previous year, the current year, or maybe 2 previous years, and the year we're discussing.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
just a quick question. Are we looking tonight to approve this 10-year capital plan? Is that what the objective is?
That's a great question. I thought these were just requests at this time. We were going to review them and get back with them because we need time to digest it rather than
Okay.
just getting it right at the meeting and with all this information trying to really digest it before another meeting's coming in. I think we need time.
Absolutely. That's what I was thinking. So,
This would be the time where the department head would raise his hand and say, you look at the top of the sheet, new fuel system. As much as it's listed for 2023, Jeff could report in, we had a failure this week, and we need to shuffle things. So, you know, now is the time. This is the exploratory meeting. Receive all the requests, ask the questions. There's a meeting next week. In the event he needed to make a return, you know, and we question whatever item was on there, he'd have the opportunity to do that. Ultimately, we need a meeting where the plan is updated by a vote, forwarded to the Board of Selectmen for them at a meeting to accept. And that's how it starts the process. This is part of the compliance. So we're fact finding right now, but at one point we need that final vote for the selectmen to accept.
Yep. And just keep it simple. You know, like the fire department or the water, the fiscal year, what they're requesting, source of funding, the impact, the need, everything that's in the town bylaw that this committee is supposed to study and come to a conclusion on, rather than getting into 10 years. We need this, we're looking to get that, this is better than that. When there's a financial need or impact to the town and we're looking at something, I'd like to digest it first, understand it. That way, then I can form questions. Where right now this is all busy, I'm trying to read everything in. It's really not for a half an hour, 45-minute, or even an hour meeting, really fair to the committee, just to look at it and say, whoa, well, that's a lot. Okay, I get, if you really need it, go ahead. I'd like it in advance so that we can review it, study it, just like the bylaws state.
So, Mr. Chairman, would it make sense to at least go back over with Mr. Murray and see what his, although we've estimated the year of replacement for each item on this list, he certainly has priorities in terms of what he would like to see go on for FY22. Does that make sense to everybody? Kind of similar to what Rich was saying?
So yeah, if you want to handle just 2022 right now, the source of funding and the impact and all that, the priority, absolutely.
Okay, so why don't we just go down and right off the top, what's your top priority, Jeff, for FY22?
So I think, you know, with respect to what, you know, the town would be funding, you know, we talked about replacement of the pickup truck for the foreman, for one, and then the buildings and grounds truck, the stake body truck. You know, I think that the existing truck for that, there was a shift that needed to be made to cover for another department with the existing truck that was used for the buildings and grounds foreman. And so that's the 49 and the 39,000.
So this is the highway foreman right here, 39, right?
Correct. And then the one just above that is the stake body truck, the 49,000.
Okay.
And those are something that would not be reimbursable with the Chapter 90 funds.
Okay.
Yeah, the next item from there, and there may, there is a possibility that there may be some other sources of funding, but I think, in all likelihood, we'd have to budget for is the clamshell catch basin cleaner with the upfit on the other truck, the $120,000.
Question for Jeff.
Yeah,
Sure.
Jeff, you said that some of those smaller trucks are not able to be funded through Chapter 90. What is the actual criteria to use Chapter 90 money on vehicles?
They have to be used to upgrade, or they're not supposed to be for maintenance, I guess.
Okay.
It's more for, upgrade, restoration, resurfacing, that type of.
Okay.
I remember in the past, Mr. Chairman, through the chair, that pickup, they never qualified for it in any way, shape, or form. So.
Yeah, pickups and snow
Right.
removal equipment typically are not reimbursable.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
And then as well, a lot of times it's questionable as far as the clamshell. I think it may be, or there may be some other a possibility on, another chapter that or grant that we may be able to get some source of funding, but in all likelihood, the town would have to budget for that and bear the cost of the clamshell catch basin cleaner.
okay. So far, the town's gonna have to budget for all three, right?
Correct.
Okay,
What's next?
And then the next priority from there would be the two larger trucks that we had spoken of, and there is a possibility that we may realize some funds for reimbursement on the larger trucks. Again, the rationale behind that would be they won't reimburse for the bodies, and that's why we looked at cab chassis and then retrofitting them with an all-season body or an existing dump body. So some possibility that some amount of that would be reimbursable with Chapter 90 funds, but and not necessarily the entire amount.
so it's a possibility at least, but we don't know.
It's at least an outside possibility.
Okay, so that'd be the town as well. Okay,
And then one of the other priorities, again, I discussed with the selectmen and done a little presentation, was the brine system and liquid de-icing equipment. And that's certainly something that the town would have to bear the cost of. It would not be a reimbursable cost.
okay. Now, would you say in the order in which you just went over these, that would be the priority order for you?
No, not necessarily that. So in order of priority, I would say we'd be looking at the brine system and de-icing equipment, the two larger dump trucks, and then the pickup trucks.
And the clamshell would come last?
And then the clamshell would come last.
Okay. And I would say the two large dump trucks are equal in priority and the two pickups are equal in priority?
Yes.
Okay. If anybody has any questions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
John. So can we go through sources of funding? And by the way, thanks for having me on capital improvement.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Um,
Yes.
So sources of funding, we're gonna go through these, or are we gonna go through all the requests first and then go through that?
I think it would make sense so we don't get lost in it. We go through these and then
One at a
move on.
time? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Thanks.
You're welcome. So where the two pickups, the source of funding would be. Oh, we should probably start with the brine. Were you looking to take that?
Do we have a column for that? I'm trying to see. We can make one.
No, no, no. There's no making anything with this sheet. We're retiring debt. 110,000 is certainly well within the threshold to request the debt exclusion. That should be considered for the brine liquid. We certainly can't come out of the budget with it.
Okay.
Rich had his hand up.
Yes, sir.
As far as the source of funding, I think right now we need to have a big picture look at things. Obviously, if the superintendent is looking at something that's going to be funded through chapter funds, then it's sort of a moot point. But I think I don't think we should be going through too much of the source of funding until we have everybody's application in or submission in, so that we can go through and come up with, we have X amount of dollars to go through and borrow and hold us to the plan. Back to what the town administrator had mentioned, we should stay very close to the plan. Obviously, there's a priority here, and it's the board's opportunity to go through and say, this gets us the most items with the amount of money that we have in the budget. I don't think the budget's set yet. I'm happy to talk debt and what's being retired, reasonably what we could put back onto the rolls for the year coming up. Reasonably, something under 50,000 we'd probably just buy. Maybe above that, we'd cut it into 3-5 pieces, something like that, and make your payments on it. Really not too much on here. At least vehicle wise is going to go beyond 5 years, just for a plan.
It does make sense to see what we have for room in terms of sources of funding to do it in the way that Rich is suggesting, instead of doing it piecemeal. And
So you don't want to have an
it does
idea
make sense to say how much we have, put everything we need to buy in the basket and see how we're going to pay for it first.
Right. I think we could come up with everything that's going to be coming up for 2022. And we'd be able to break it down and say, yep, we'd pay for it all up front in thirds and fifths, whatever it is. And then if we had a dollar amount that said, okay, it's pretty reasonable to expend X for the next 3 years, let's vote it forward.
So you just want to go through all of these, see what everybody's requesting, and then figure out later how it's going to be paid for?
Uh,
It's a good exercise, Mr. Chairman, that we know things that are potentially, we know, for example, that there are potentially Chapter 90 eligible items on here. We know that. We don't have to dig down too much further until we get the whole picture. We know that maybe at some point, for example, I mentioned the resurfacing of the playground being changed to the DMC. That's going to be, I'm going to look for an earmark or a grant source of funding for something like that. So we know that that's not going to be part of it. But just to get maybe just a 200-foot view of it first, and then kind of dig down on those things that we know are gonna have to be financed or paid for from the budget. That might be the better way to go.
Okay. So then at what point does this committee make a recommendation?
When you have sources of, when you have your complete overview and we've discussed how to pay for things, and then we've agreed on how those recommendations are gonna be, and you make the recommendation after you've heard from the department heads, what their priorities are, what their proposed sources of funding are, just like Jeff did. And then the committee takes all that information and step by step makes a recommendation on every item that's been requested.
Okay. All right, is that done for the highway?
That pretty much takes care of the highway.
Okay, beautiful job. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Then if we'll go to the water sewer infrastructure projects.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm looking at the wrong one. Let's see.
Is George on? Otherwise, I can present it.
I don't see him.
Okay. So it was emailed out to you today, I believe, our 10-year capital plan.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. The first page and a half is this year. Page and a third is what's going on this year. If you want to review that, we can review that. Our fiscal 2022 request is item number 2 on the second page. It's not in spreadsheet format. We can easily do that. But I suppose if we review with what's going on this year, the blending is going to go online in a couple of weeks. Towards the end of March, waiting on one more part, and then that's going to go online. And then that's already been funded. We purchased the pickup truck, $44,000. The third item, appropriate asset and resilience management. That's a DEP requirement. We did receive a grant from the state. 60% of that will be granted. 20% of it will be in-kind services performed by water and sewer staff. And then 20% of it will have to be paid for. We'll pay for that through retained earnings. The heating system upgrade for water department has been done. Design, permitting, and bidding for the new PFAS water treatment facility is in process, and that's on the SRF. We have a $6.5 million loan through the SRF, and that is being funded through that. We will begin construction on our new water on Mason Road. That should start in the May timeframe. Let me find that sheet. I believe that's a May timeframe that we'll be starting that construction, and that will go on till November. That's through the SRF. And then we are working on another a system to augment the blending to remove PFAS at Station 3, Well 7. That $350,000 remaining from the blending project and $400,000 from borrowing. That will be that will be part of the ongoing PFAS program project. Pump Station 1, again, that's through the SRF, and that is ongoing. And Okay, and the blending, and control. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to read through some of these. Okay, yeah, that's still ongoing. Actually, that's done. That part of it's done. For this year, we will begin construction phase of a new transmission water main between Station 1 and Station 6. That is in the design phase at this point. We have been approved for an $11.5 million SRF loan, 0% interest with a minimum of a 13% principal forgiveness. That is in the design phase at this point. And then the Bates Road and Dresser Hill water tanks, both are in need of maintenance on the inside, as outlined there. They stripped the inside. We drain it of water, strip the inside of all of its lining, replace the lining, and then fill it back up with water again. That's $600,000, and that is part of the current $6.5 million SRF loan. That will be going out to bid within the next couple of months. So that is this year and next year's needs for water. On the back pages, sewer capital improvement plan. We're in the middle of an I&I inflow and infiltration project to reline. We'll be starting to reline sewer pipes in 2 sections of town, and that is again SRF funded. Those are 2% loans, I believe, both of these with 13% principal forgiveness. And the heating system on Carroll Road, and that I believe that's been completed as well. And next year is just going to be continuation of the I&I program. This is all we've had spent considerable time, energy, and funds on studying our sewer mains throughout town, and we're in the at the point of the mitigation step of cutting that infiltration. So those are the 2 reports for water and sewer. I don't know what happened to George or to Jeff Faulkner, but both of them were going to be online to answer questions about our capital improvement plan and about our about the PFAS program. So with that, I guess, any questions?
Well, I thank you for that. The only thing I got in the email was that little spreadsheet on the PFAS for the water. That's it.
Oh, you,
So everything else is Greek.
really?
Or some, you know,
There should have been a Word document
No.
outline about 6 pages long.
no,
Okay, and then you got a spreadsheet that must look
yeah,
a little like that.
yep,
Okay,
Yes.
that's something that Ty and Bond gave us. Those are yes, those are our ongoing projects with that are being done through Ty and Bond, but there is a capital improvement plan. It was supposed to have been emailed out. It was sent out by Jen mid-afternoon to Michelle, I believe. And then it should have been forwarded to you. I don't know what happened.
Did everybody else get it?
I didn't receive anything, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
There, I have exactly what Scott showed everyone.
all right. Obviously, we're gonna have to go by the bylaws, and the committee will have to come up with the form everybody's gonna have to use. So we don't come into this confusing. Let's look at this. We're hearing about this at the last second. 6 pages don't even have. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Mr. Chairman, I have on my screen, what I can see is I don't know if everybody else sees this. It's just, I see the water
Yep.
department, the 2021 costs and projects. Is there a,
Right.
does this scroll down to anything lower than this? So we can see the 2022 request. Oh, thank you. So what,
Mr.
There should have
Chairman,
been
can,
1, 2, 3.
can,
There should have been 6 pages.
Mr. Treasurer,
Mr. Ruda, can you go back up to the start of the 2021 for the water tab? And there we go. So the capital improvement has already approved C28, that's 900,000. It's engineering and it's construction costs. It covers well 8,
Okay,
well 1 on station 8, and
Yep.
then number 7 down at station 3, if I have my numbers right.
yeah,
And-
it's 8 at 1, yeah, 8 at 1 and 7 at 3, yes.
Right. So 525,000 of that is engineering costs, already been approved. The other 375 take care of some construction costs. That's already been approved, 2021, it's good. The 5.225 are going to be the top pieces. If you go through the 1.5, 470, 310, 200, 145, and 2.6 million. That should be your 5.225 SRF. That's the 13.2% forgiveness, principal forgiveness, 2% interest.
that was
So-
already, Rich,
That-
excuse me, that was already approved and we already have the loan for that.
That's right.
Okay,
Correct.
Right.
So we've already done this. The next thing chronologically that had happened, and I'll take the 2 easy ones. The 185.5 was originally authorized for 200,000. They
mhm,
took 185.5, and this is for the engineering for the submission for the PFAS.
And we did get a grant for that just this past week.
Right. So if at one point we're going to go to the townwide summary, and you're going to see where it doesn't appear as a debt. We've expended the money, but it doesn't calculate itself out, for 10 years for the 200,000. The $1 million transitional main was borrowed into 2 portions. We had a $650,000 portion and a $350,000 portion. It connected the new well, which is being funded from the 5.225, and it connects us back to the site of the PFAS remediation plant. The decision, as I understand it, was instead of having 3 pumping stations, you would pump to a central PFAS remediation site and then move your water back out. So as much as the $1 million was once referred to as the blending pipe, it's also a source pipe that provides water from one well to the remediation site. So when we're done blending, it's just going to provide active flow. As I understand it, there's going to be a request for another pipe for Station 1, which is where the water department is, the old Dairy Brothers site. That would be the new well site, again, part of the 5.225, and it would be piped back to the PFAS remediation. So I believe we've already approved everything down to the 45, and then we're at C32, which would be our new submission. Mr. Zakowski, am I correct?
I believe so. It's just hard for me to see that.
Okay.
spreadsheet. It's-
So if I could, the
The next item for consideration for the Capital Improvement Planning Committee is the $1 million, which connects Well 1, which is the West Main Street site that's being rehabilitated, back to the PFAS remediation plant. And if Mr. Ruda would scroll down a few rows, thank you. The next item is the 11.5 million SRF water treatment plant. So step one was to connect the wells. We're halfway there. The second part is to go through and to create the PFAS remediation plant. This number of 11.5 million, and I'm speaking because I was copied on the email that came from Jeff Faulkner. Originally, this is he here?
Jeff Faulkner is just texted me and said that the link that he has said that the meeting has not started yet, but he's trying to enter. I don't
Perfect.
know. He just asked me if I could send him the link, but I don't have his email. All I have is a text message. Text phone
Sir,
number.
give me a minute. Give me a minute. Let me.
But he can answer technical questions. But yes, that is you did it. You do have it captured very well on your spreadsheet.
Okay. Please tell Jeff I just sent him the link. And the original plan was 6.5 million. There was a revision on the plan and it went to 11.5 Friday, and I've updated it. I believe this is still the same SRF where you've gone through, there's going to be a principal forgiveness, and I don't have all the details, 2% interest,
Which
zero
one's that?
interest,
The 11.5 million?
11.5.
That's a 0% interest. That's 0% and a minimum 13% principal forgiveness. That is for PFAS treatment. That's what that SRF is set up for. I see
I'm gonna-
PFAS in my sleep.
All right. Mr. Ruda, do you have that project update from Friday?
Hold on, I'm just getting Jeff Faulkner into the meeting.
Good.
I'm going to suggest at some point, I guess, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Mayotte, that we're running up against the FAA meeting, that we consider maybe a 15-minute recess. I can review my budget in about 15 minutes. You can get any input you need from the department heads, and we could reconvene this. I don't think we should leave those that are showing up for the FAA waiting, because this is going to be a little bit more in detail than we originally thought.
Jeff Faulkner is here.
Yeah, Jonathan, so are you just, for FAA, you just want to give your budget summary? Is that basically what you want to do?
Yeah, I'm going to give my budget summary. I've asked some of the department heads. I see the police chief is on. Jeff is on. We don't need, he probably won't have much to say about his side of the budget. It's my first glance at the FY22 budget. So I think in the interest of time, it might be a good idea just to switch gears so that we can do a quick FAA overview so you can kind of digest where we're at with the budget. And then we can move back to this.
So you want me to convene for what, 20 minutes and then reconvene?
I think we could do let's recess declare a recess for capital improvement, open the FAA meeting, and I'll get right into the budget, and any glaring questions for those department heads that showed up. We've got the chief on the phone. and the highway department, they can just quickly go over their budget and where they stand with it. I don't think at this point it's more than a 20 or 30 minute, at the very most 30-minute process.
So, Mr. Administrator, 30-minute recess?
Yes.
Okay. 18:32, I recess this meeting for 30 minutes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can we fill Jeff Faulkner in on what's going on? Just briefly.
Mark, you want to let them know what we're doing there, or?
Yes, right now we're going into the FAA section with Chairman Mayotte to go over the budgets and the monies. We had we're going into recess with capital improvement for 30 minutes. So
Okay.
the FAA can do their thing.
Still on the same meeting link?
Yes,
Okay.
Actually,
Great.
Jeff, I
Only
gave
just-
an overview of our 2021 and 2022 requests.
Okay,
And then we were right in the middle of it. We're gonna go back to it as soon as they get done with the
okay.
budget part of this thing.
I'll be here.
Okay.
All set.
Yes, can we hold 1 second, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
All right. Jonathan?
yes.
Yeah, Ann, the FAA member, Ann, is trying to join right now. So wait 1 second before she joins.
Michelle, could you resend the link to George at Sewer Water and to Ann? Hey, the good news, gang, is that we're gonna start meeting live on the 29th, or the meeting following the 29th.
Jonathan, let me know when Ann is able to join. I think she's trying to join right now. Okay, John, did she get logged in? Hello?
I don't see her here.
Yeah, she says she's waiting for her host to let her join.
I think she's in the wrong link.
Okay. I gave her the link I joined with, so is there a different one for?
No, it's the same
I
one.
just sent her the new one.
Okay,
Yeah, George is in the same boat. He just texted me, said he can't get in.
Oh.
All right, we can wait on George, and Michelle can work with Ann. I'm gonna get going, just in the interest of time. So up on your screen, you see the revenue sheet, which is posted online at dudleyma.gov and updated regularly. If you look at the far right column, where it says right here, percent left, line items listed at 39% or less that show with 4 months left in the fiscal year, we're pretty much on track in terms of collecting what was projected. For example, let's go up here. Rich gave a nice explanation of the personal property taxes collections. They're ongoing. We've been receiving them for the past 2 weeks and updating it. So at 35% with 4 months for a quarterly bill, we're right on track. Some items that show up in brackets, indicate things that we collected in excess of what we projected. Some items are not paid quarterly, but twice a year. So you see those things fall into the 50% or more category. Obviously, we're pretty much on track. There are going to be some things that are slightly behind. I mentioned last night I was a little bit concerned about building permits because of all the construction that was shut down, but I don't know, over the past 72 hours, everything seems to be going crazy with trying to get things built, permits pulled, and so forth. And I just briefly, our host community agreements, while we're talking about our host community agreements are now back on track. We're actually looking at another site out in West Dudley for a grow facility. In terms of Stevens Mill is at least now a year behind, and that was absolutely affected due to the pandemic. So when we're thinking about that project, just think about that whole entire project being at least a year behind.
In just 60 seconds, we'll take inside the company making what could be the next.
So if you go to the bottom here, we're at 38.38% in terms of revenues projected versus collected. And then if you put it in perspective and look at what we got for local aid, which shows up as lottery. I'm going to put that up right here if I can. Let's see where it is. Lottery aid is local aid. So that's money in the bank. That's been committed by the state, and then we're going to get that final payment of 810. And just that final payment of 810 that we can anticipate getting puts this closer to 34%. So the bottom line is, in terms of revenue, we're not that far off. We're in better shape than what I originally anticipated. Are there any questions about revenues? Okay. Go back to that. Let's take a look at the working budget for 22. So, I mean, it's been kind of a roller coaster ride over the last year and a half in terms of the budget. If everybody will give me a minute or two, I'll just kind of review where we were and what we did over the past 12 months. I actually had to jot it down because it's been unbelievable, the response to what we had to do to respond to the pandemic and the unknown amounts of money to get the budget on track. So in 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, I recommended an FY21 general fund budget of $9,178,442.19, and that was just before the pandemic, just before the shutdown. The department heads put in their requests. My town administrator's recommendation was that amount, $9,178,442. And that amount reflected a reduction of $205,505 from the previous fiscal year. So my recommended amount was a reduction from FY20. And then as it became apparent that the amount of the reduction was not going to be sufficient, we didn't, if you recall, I was sweating out those local aid numbers. There was some discussion that it might be 20% of below level funding. It might have remained at level funding. We jointly made a decision that that $9 million figure may be insufficient to get us through FY21. So I recommended a series of furloughs and spending cuts that reduced the FY21 general fund budget by a total of $456,195, and that was below FY20 levels. So the budget came down to $8,722,247. And the Board of Selectmen approved those reductions. The FAA recommended the cuts at the 2020 spring town meeting, and the town meeting voters adopted it. Then in July, 4 furloughs became permanent layoffs, and the town reduced its staff by 3 full-timers and 1 part-timer. In October, the funding numbers in the course of the pandemic became a little bit more clear to us. We came up with ongoing service models, including the kiosk and by appointment, and the cohort model, where we had half the people here, half the people out. We had people working from home, et cetera. So we kind of stabilized in terms of how we were going to have to conduct business going forward. But what became clear was there was a need to bring back critical staff, particularly highway staff. We were in October. We're looking at the winter coming up. So I recommended appropriating the savings gained through the furloughs, layoffs, and cuts in the following ways. The first way was to increase the FY21 general fund budget to $9,338,585, and that amount represented a budget still of $45,000 less than the final FY20 general fund budget. Then we deposited 170 grand into the town stabilization funds. And then we did this in order to properly fund all departments and protect against the risk of slower changing federal reimbursement allowances in response to the pandemic. And as Paul Kahn knows, that kind of came to fruition. It's slow and ever changing. So he's been dealing with that for almost a year now, to his credit. And then we decided to use the remaining amount to meet all the town's contractual obligations and remain adequately staffed and funded through the end of FY21, which we're getting close to now. And that included public safety, public health. We brought back all our furloughed highway staff, and we did so through what turned out to be a fairly active winter. So in October, again, the Board of Selectmen approved this plan. The FAA recommended, and town meeting voters adopted it. So my initial budget review for FY22, which is now up on the screen, what I did was I started off the way I normally do. I tried to fund everything that would get us from July 1st and right through the entire fiscal year. So I didn't look at a 110 budget or just getting us to October. I just funded it with recommendations that I thought we could all live with. The majority, we have contractual obligations, grant obligations, that sort of thing. I left public safety staff at existing levels. There's one funding obligation in the fire department that the chief will speak about, and that's tied directly to a grant obligation and future grant funding opportunities. So we should take a critical look at what he's telling us. I left efficiencies and cost savings gained through other funding sources. For example, online permitting that had been initially paid for through the CARES Act and replaced an otherwise required full-time staff position. I left that in place. And that alone is a $35,000 cost savings in the first year going forward, because we're replacing technology. We're replacing a staff person with technology, essentially. I held off on funding any non-contractual pay increases for FY22. And I did that. That's one of those few things that I did because we just awarded raises to non-contractual employees who were on furlough. We did that in October. So it hadn't even been, it won't even be 12 months by the time we get to July. And we also have a merit pool article from previous years that we can take a look at using in October to fund those non-contractual employees in terms of salary increases. I left funding in place for legal compliance with electronic records keeping, network backup, cybersecurity, etc. And I funded the schools. I don't know if anybody saw the meeting the other night, but I gave the schools 2.5% increase over last year, as opposed to what they had initially requested. And we'll see how that pans out. The problem is with the budget that I'm taking my first crack at for FY22. You look down here, we're at an overall 4.4% increase as opposed to 2.5% increase, which is the target that we normally go for. I think we can pretty much figure out why we're at 4.4 instead of 2.5, because we had a delay increases. We had to delay some spending that now is, needs to be made. Overall, at 4.4, it's actually better than what I anticipated, for my first draft and my first initial crack at FY22. So going forward, there are some things that we need to consider. The first thing we ought to consider is there are big promises of boatloads of money coming through with the recent $1.9 trillion federal COVID relief bill, but we shouldn't base any of our budgeting decisions on that. Whether they say they're going to cut us a check tomorrow or not, none of our decisions at this point should be made on any of that. Revenues may be slightly down, but those that we were, had been planning on, such as the host community agreement, such as the solar land lease agreement from Amoresco that we have on the capped landfill, those show some real tangible signs of gaining momentum. So we should look at that as we lost that revenue in FY21, but there's no reason to believe that we won't have that revenue in FY22. I think we're back on track with that. So we should look at that as a temporary loss in revenue for that 1 year, as opposed to, an ongoing loss in revenue. I think those things will be in good shape with those things that we had a delay and we had been working on. I don't know yet what our free cash is going to look like. And I'm also using the governor's local aid number, which is slightly increased over last year. I don't know what the final local aid number will be. I wouldn't anticipate it being less than what the governor suggested it would be once the House and Senate take a look at it, but we don't know what that final number is. And, not too long ago, we did the tax classification hearing at the Board of Selectmen, and the tax rate has gone down substantially in FY22. So the only guiding thing that I would offer to the FAA is that we should not make the mistakes of the past and not further defer any maintenance and replacement, and we should not let ourselves fall out of compliance with legal and regulatory obligations, because for the past several years I've been complaining to the Board of Selectmen, to the FAA capital improvement, that a lot of the sins of the past are catching up with us. So we should, that should be one of our guiding principles, is to, whenever we can, remain compliant and look for ways to fund and make sure that you know, we're following the correct regulations that are eventually going to catch up with us. We're maintaining our equipment, we're replacing our equipment. We should try to do that. So with that big condensed initial budget presentation, I'll take any questions you might have.
I'm here. Oh, sorry, John.
I saw your mouth moving, but I didn't know if you were
Oh.
talking to somebody else in the room or.
I had it on mute. No, I'm just looking at the 4.4%. That's it seems a little ambitious. You really, do you think you're going to hit that, or?
Well, I'm at 4.4% with my first glance at this budget. What I think how we can fund this budget, bring us right through the next fiscal year. It's a 4.4% increase.
Okay.
That's where I'm at. That's my first initial sit down for 45 minutes and with the information I have now, go through it and get us to that point.
Okay.
My goal is always 2.5%, but we do have some.
So the 2.5% on the Dudley Charlton School, that's just a number you're throwing in to keep it at around 2.5%. What do you know what the minimum increase would have been? What, you know what that number is over last year that we're obligated?
We're working with an artificial number from last year.
Right.
Last year there was a reduction. We took a reduction on our side, on the municipal side. The schools, the regional school district did a reduction on their side, which we were at. Let's see if it's on here. Dudley Charlton, yeah. So their request was 9,109,000. They reduced to 8,880,000.
Right.
In response to the pandemic, but that 8,880,000 is still 1% over what they were budgeted at the previous fiscal year. So
the 2020, I don't know if I'm mistaken on this, or maybe it was 19. We had reset when we did the override. We set our budget. From that point, have we met the minimum increases?
yes,
That would be required. We have.
yes.
And so this 222 increase would also meet the minimum. From what was last year's?
From what was last year's is not really, you can't base it on last year's because the minimum for last year was somewhere between this number of 9,109,000 and this number of 8,880,000. It was somewhere in between there. So I would have to go back and get that information.
Well, I'm just
information a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, the only reason why is because over the years we've done this where we've not even made the minimum, and then we end up in a situation 10 years later or whatever, and we're running huge overrides to get them back up to par. I'm just curious as to where we would have been had we didn't take the COVID reduction.
We've met the minimum, and Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've met the minimum every single year since that override had passed.
Okay. All right. And so this 222 increase, 222K increase, that would meet the minimum if this budget was set for where it was last year.
Well, without going too far down the pigeon, down the rabbit hole, is there is a state minimum and then there's the district assessment. There's a district agreement that doesn't necessarily, there's always an adjustment between what the state says minimum required and what the district agreement calls for. I don't have that number right with me tonight, but I know I'm trying to base this off of realistic numbers. That's why I came up with 1.5% as to what, get us closer to something that's doable on the municipal side. And like I said, at 4.4% increase, where my budget recommendation brings all departments right through June 30th of 23. So, 22. So.
Does anybody have any questions on the budget?
Mr. Chairman, we have a few minutes left, and we have the police and fire chiefs here. If they wanted to just briefly discuss their budgets, then we won't have to have them at this point come back to the next meeting.
Sure.
I can discuss mine if you want, Mr. Administrator, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Chief.
I think I've sent out everything. Michelle has it. She'll probably forward it off to you folks if you don't already have it. I have like a budget breakdown, kind of breaks down each line item request, and you also obviously have the sheets that's there. Most of the accounts, there's not really any other dramatic spending in the budget that I have. Only ones that have gone up somewhat substantially are obviously salaries, because I believe they have 3 or 4 officers that go up in steps. And then you're also looking at everybody there with about a 2.5% increase by contract. So that shows like a $35,000 increase in the patrolman's salary line item. So that's why you'll see that number will stand out at you. But again, combination of overall 2.5% increase contractually, and also at least three officers, I believe, are going up in steps. So that's what you'll see in that one. And the other one that you'll see is our Quinn bill number, or the education incentive. As you know, over the years, if you look at that one, that's stayed fairly consistent for about the last 4 or 5 years, because we have a new program for new hires that calls for a flat rate education incentive versus straight percentages that are based on your overall budget. So what happens here is I have 3 officers that are going to be obtaining their master's degree, going up in programs. So they're going to be getting a combination of flat rate and percentage for some of them. So that line item is showing an increase of about $11,000. So that's the contractual obligation that goes with that. Again, that's 3 officers that have gone out and getting their master's degrees, and should probably have them by June. So it's a big accomplishment for the officers to be able to go back and get that level of education. So it's really good for the department. But that's probably the other big number that stands out on everything from there. Other than that, most things are fairly standard. There's no other real dramatic things in there. One thing I would just put on your radar for consideration, and I'll probably bring up in the fall, is I'm trying to bring back the lieutenant's position. That's been something we kind of scuttled because of the COVID situation, but it definitely is one of those things that I'm going to have to address at some point in the near future, simply to get a second in command in place. Really, as the only major department here that doesn't have one, it's really been a hindrance on operations. So that is something I'd be working on towards the future, but probably have those discussions more or less for late summer, early fall, so I can cover that with you all. That's about the only other thing I'll just throw on your radar for now, and I can break that down at some point. If anybody has any questions for me, I can answer them now. Otherwise, those are the main points I have. And I just refer you to the budget breakdown summary that I sent you to take a look at it. And if any other questions come up at any time, feel free to reach out to me anytime.
All right, thank you, Chief. Anybody have any questions for the chief? Okay, is Fire Chief available, or?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, Dean.
So, hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. So, my budget pretty much similar. As you can see, I level funded all the expense lines. Any of the increases are contractual salary increases and step increases. The one item that the administrator was talking about was the firefighter Nick Daly position. The grant is ending and the town has become responsible for that. So that's where the additional 54,000 comes from. If you took that out, my total increases only came to roughly 25,000, which was only a 1.9% increase. It's that one line that we're obligated to take over. I mean, I need to have 2 people on the overnight can't run an ambulance with one person, so. And to try and defer some of that cost, I actually reduced 2 of the lines down to $1. The lifeguards and the cancer screenings, which I didn't want to do, but I was trying to lower the amount that I increased. So I did that to try and lighten the blow a little bit. But I mean, overall, 79,000 out of a $1.2 million budget, I don't think is that unreasonable. And the other thing is, I'm not putting in for any capital requests this year, as some of you are on the capital improvement committee. I decided to put it off for a year. So there'll be no capital requests from the fire department this year, and I won't be requesting anything in the fall. So I'll have no items on the fall town meeting either. So it'll just be get my budget approved in the spring, and that'll be it for us this year. Unless anybody has any questions, that's all I have. And one other thing real quick, I mentioned at the selectmen's meeting last night, I have written a number of grants that I just submitted that totaled over $600,000. And I'm waiting to hear on those.
All right. Anybody have any questions for the chief? Okay, thank you, chief. Very good. Is there any other department heads that want to go over their budget?
Mr. Chairman, if you had a few minutes, I'm happy to put mine to bed. In the event you have a question on something, I'll always be able to make the return for a following week.
Okay, Rich.
If we get up to there, thank you. The first portion, salaries, need to keep the office open. First increase you're going to see is the part-time clerk. Need to get somebody in here to cover those vacations, to help with the training and what have you. Handful of dollars, it's a part-time person. As we go, the next items coming up, the tax title expense. As much as land court is open, land court is not operating at full capacity. So we've got the lion's share of our tax liens that are of age there to be foreclosed on. But I anticipate more when the doors swing open. When we get down to the county, unemployment self-insurance trust, it's a modest amount. That's not a mistake. In anticipation of the layoffs, money was put into the account so that we could go through and cover the furloughs, the short-term furloughs, the long-term furloughs. We're just putting a couple of dollars into that trust line item so that we can continue to grow the balance. When we get down to county retirement, that's the actuarial valuation that we get. This is the bill. The 871,792 is just that. There's a funding formula for the Worcester Regional Retirement System. It did go up more than 10%. I want to say there's something in their bylaws. They weren't increasing more than 9.95% from year to year. But if you move forward, we retired more people, so our base grew. The idea is to get that funded by 2035. Also, the board is going through and reducing the funding rate. So the actuarial rate, which used to be as high as 8%, has been reduced. You reduce your expectations of what you earn in the market with your reserves. You're going to increase the annual assessment, and or you go to a longer funding time. Again, we paid the extra money, made sure that we had water, sewer together, and then the general fund. We, of course, go through, pay everything July 1st, and they give us that 6-month discount for the second half. Health insurance, we have fewer heads to insure.
plus the Hampshire Council of Governments Insurance Trust, as of April 14th, will be asked to vote a 2% reduction. That's great. I sit on that board, so it is a good thing. We're headed in the right direction. Earnings investments are helping us as much as claims are going down. So it's good to be able to report a reduction. Medicare tax is just perfunctory. It's 1.45%. I want to say the lion's share of the Dudley employees are Medicare eligible. There's only a handful of people who've started pre-86. When you get down to insurance general, unfortunately, that's the other direction. We put out an RFP last year, didn't get the success we were hoping for. The RFP goes out this year again in hopes of maybe getting some people to sharpen up their pencil and to give us something competitive. I would say that this is an outer bounds sort of return. Fingers crossed that we would return additional savings. When it comes to the maturing debt, we are retiring a few pieces of debt. We can get to the debt on another side. For the most part, we all know what's on there. Little bits are coming off. At the CIP, I gave a quick 1, 2, 3 as to the items we have outstanding. If I could bring forward one item, it's a great time to borrow money. If you're refinancing your home, it's great to borrow short-term money. We had very competitive loans. The water department was able to secure some money, pocket change. Of course, that's an exaggeration. Very modest. If you wanted to read in between the lines, the Webster Dudley Intermunicipal, we pay a portion of the debt and the capital for the sewer operation. At one point, that was approximately 3 times the size. The loan's coming to an end, and as a result, there's less to be paid. The Webster dispatch assessment is just the operational assessment from the Southern Worcester County organization. The board voted a 0%, 229. And then we get back to the OPEB trust, which is $10,000. Again, we want to stay the course. Back to what the town administrator was talking about. We wanted to make sure that we had always made our obligations, even in a tight year. So that trust is slowly growing. I will say our OPEB liabilities are substantial. We did our valuation this year, separated out the enterprise funds. So every bit helps. The 10,000 is a move in the right direction. Questions, thoughts? Too fast, too slow? Did you want to go through and talk about the debt that the town administrator had put on?
Well,
Maybe we can go back into the capital improvement meeting for that.
Okay, absolutely.
Rich, real quick, could you just do the county retirement one more time?
Okay, so the county retirement is our actuarial valuation. Every other year, the Worcester Regional Retirement System goes through and does a valuation. Rich Carmignani appears on their valuation as being a town of Dudley employee. So what happens, they take my demographics along with the other members in service, and they calculate out for active employees what the expected term is going to be prior to retirement. There's X percentage chance I'm going to retire first chance I get, and they factor it all the way out to 80% and whether or not I'd stay beyond that. They take the demographics and sort of figure that out and get a picture with some certainty percentage-wise as to what each member in service is going to do. They bundle that all together with your current retirees. They have their demographics and the current payouts. So what they've gone through and done is calculated how much money is on hand, how much money is needed to meet the current obligation, next year's pension benefit and how much money needs to be put in, given the 7.5% interest rate, so that you're fully funded by 2035. They put all that together, along with a few dollars for all of the current employees. That would be the 8% normal cost that you would get. And here's your bill to be financially sound. A good backstory on this is previously they had not gone down to this level of detail. They would go through, perform an actuarial valuation for the 70 member units, I think was at the time. They would go through, figure the obligation for the next 2 years, and the town of Dudley's contributions to that were a percentage. And if the town of Dudley didn't have a lot in payroll, it would pay a smaller amount. Right now, it's an actual bill. So every early retiree we have, every disability, every new hire, every retiree is being reflected in this. And we're ahead of schedule. I don't want to say that for fear of, a setback, but the Worcester Regional Retirement System does not manage their own money. They're with the PRIT, Pension Reserve Investment Trust. So our money at the Worcester Regional Retirement System, one of 90 member units, is in with the state plan, and the state plan they've got billions. They're at the point right now where they're eliminating managers of funds to funds, looking for those opportunities. And as much as everyone says it's easy to earn money in this environment, what they're looking to do is earn money in this environment, but not having any exposure in the event there's a sector correction, if that makes sense. It's easy when the stock market is just soaring, everybody's buying tech stocks that double inside of 6 months, and then you blink and all of a sudden the stock's not worth anything. So there's a great deal of analysis and research that goes in so that there are steady, reasonable, predictable gains. And in a down market, they would be able to go through and seize on those opportunities, as well as not suffer too bad. They also have the ability to go through and invest in a few things that maybe the town individually would not. Too deep of an answer, not enough of an answer.
I was just looking for one sentence, but that's okay.
Thank you, sir.
No, it stands out. It's it's roughly $120,000 increase.
Correct. And
Wondering,
is
this a problem we're running into going forward with retirees, or
it's your retirees. I don't want to call anyone out by name. Unfortunately, I've had some wonderful retirees pass in the last 5 years. They were wonderful people. They probably only drew a very modest pension. And we are replacing them with, and Mike, you've been around for a good while. Name the people who have retired. You have some senior people who had put in a great deal of time and are just starting their retirement. So I think this is part of the catch-up. Also, it's pretty much an actual bill. So we're looking forward to that point in time that's maybe 12, 14 years away, where we're close to full funding, and this portion of the budget can be used for other things. There would just be a modest annual, a modest assessment for current employees and their normal cost. Reasonably, there's only 1% or 2% in there that actually deals with the day-to-day operations. The idea that you have 90 member units operating, it's a wonderful bargain.
do you anticipate this issue on a year-to-year basis?
If you give me one moment, I can draw up a few a quick comparison. Let's see. If we went back to 2019, and this is the whole dollar amount, we were at 802,000, went up to 869, went to 955, and then 1091. Those are my gross numbers. Of course, you're going to be backing off the water sewer employees and water and sewer separately, plus we get the early discount. Quickly, 9.6%, 8.25, 9.89%. And this year, you're right, it is noticeable. It's 14.24% if you take everything in aggregate.
Right. Well, I'm just looking at these numbers. That's you know, at a 13, even at a 10% increase per year.
Right.
That's significant.
It is, but if you look at it the other way, where instead of us paying out of pocket for it, we're paying a year in advance, and the Worcester Regional Retirement System is earning 7.5% on their money, and then some, which is something I don't think we could do by ourselves. I understand it is a difficult one, and it's really not arguable. It's the bill. They're going to go through and they're going to pay our retirees for the next year, and it's almost an actual. There are other obligations in there. If you had a disability retirement, that dollar amount is in there. The early retirements are also separated out. So.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Is there any other any questions for Rich?
Again, I'm happy to revisit the debt for the CIP, and also we can do a follow-up for,
Okay.
There we go. That'll take an hour.
Is there any other departments that want to talk about their budget?
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Yeah, it's George for the water sewer. Did you happen to, I came in late in the meeting, I had the wrong numbers on my thing, but do you have a budget, our updated budget plan?
Yes, capital improvement plan or an updated budget? I mean,
Budget.
We've got the budget. If Jonathan, you want to put up the budget there for water and sewer, I guess.
Could we, I'm trying to manage our time the best I can, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. You think we could switch back over to the CIP now? We said 30 minutes, or we're way over, and talk about that, and then George is going to have plenty to say about that, and then maybe we can move to our follow-up meeting and do the rest of the departments.
Sure.
I don't want to steal your thunder, George, but we're way behind right now. Just cost about $10,000 a second, so.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. So then what we'll do is if there's a motion to end the finance committee meeting, I'll take that. If anyone wants to make that motion.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Hello?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
A second for that? I don't know if the hand's up.
Huh.
Is it back? Did I hear a second? Okay, all in favor, ending the FAA meeting? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. All right, so, Mr. Chairman, it's back to you for the CIP meeting.
Okay. We left off with the water sewer. Just before people go crazy, I just have to repeat something so people don't go off track. The committee is here to study proposed capital projects improvements involving major non-recurring tangible assets and projects which are purchased or undertaken at intervals of not less than 5 years, have a useful life of at least 5 years, and cost $20,000 or more. All officers, boards, and committees shall, by June 30th of each year, give the committee, on forms prepared by it, information concerning all anticipated projects requiring town meetings actions during the ensuing 5 years. The committee shall consider the relative need, impact, timing, and cost of these expenditures and the effect each will have on the financial position of the town. And then, of course, after that happens, the committee will vote and they will do up the report that they agreed upon and turn it in to the Board of Selectmen. So before we get into all these details and that we don't need to go into, because this isn't the committee for that, I just let you know what the committee needs in order to make its recommendation, the information we need to get to move it forward to the selectmen. And like I mentioned earlier, this is a great sheet. But earlier when Mr. Zakowski was speaking, he had 6 sheets of paper that I never even saw. He was going through. Other reports I haven't received. Highways haven't received. The only report I actually received was from the fire department with their needs, the fiscal year, their cost, the priority. The only thing I was missing was the source of funding, which, as explained by the treasurer administrator, we can go over later. But all of the departments, whether they're sending it to the administrator's office and it's supposed to be forwarded to this committee, or whether now that we have the town email, it can be forwarded directly to us to review, as well as the town administrator and town treasurer. Because when I don't see this stuff and then it comes up right here, right now, we're all different. We all digest information differently. I need it ahead of time in writing so I can review it, digest it, research so I understand it, so I can then have questions to ask. And like I said, the only 3 things this committee's here for. So we obviously came back from recess and we can continue on with the water sewer now.
Okay, just let me finish up. Everything that I outlined on our capital improvement plan, and I will make sure that this Word document that George put together is forwarded out to you. If it has, yeah, I don't know what happened to it, but it didn't get there. In any case,
Scott, excuse me for 1 second. Just to clarify, for the purposes of the bylaw, this form that this spreadsheet serves as the capital improvement form that we submit to the Board of Selectmen to vote on.
everything I outlined off of this Word document is in that spreadsheet. Rich was just finishing up outlining those items, and they're showing there as lines 30, 31, 32, and 33, I believe. Those are the same items that are on our capital improvement plan. So that it is there already. It's in that spreadsheet, but we'll get you any explanation that you need for that.
Excellent. Hopefully I can get a copy of that mailed to me by the administrator or anybody that really cares. And so I can actually review it and the rest of the committee can actually review it, digest, take some time.
Absolutely, I get it. Nothing worse than sitting in a meeting trying to make a decision and being handed a bunch of information to try to digest at once.
Right.
Get it in as much in advance as possible. But yeah, like I said, the capital expenses that we have prioritized for 2021 and 2022 are on that spreadsheet. And I'm assuming that some of those lines further down on that spreadsheet for 2026 and all of that are the same ones that are outlined on this spreadsheet, this Word document. So, oh, that's even better. Yes, backhoe backhoe's on there for 2025. Yes, that is there. Water main replacement of heavy duty dump truck. The backhoe is actually on, I did see, the backhoe is actually on 2028. Okay, so those, the recurring needs are on that spreadsheet. There might be some fluctuating, but 2021 and 2022 are there. With that, that is everything that I had already outlined on the
Right,
what I had read from this spread from my document.
right.
So it is there.
Okay. Thank you.
And we do have our engineer anticipating that there may be some questions about the whole PFAS thing and the need for it. We do have our engineering representative, Jeff Faulkner, online with us as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, how you doing? George for the water. I came on late, but Scott's right. A lot of that information was changed into different date times. They're basically the same thing as the original 2019. Problem is that now we're running into this new PFAS situation and new rehabilitation of buildings and wells, like I discussed earlier last year. The timetables have just changed a little bit with added new things that have come up that we weren't aware of, and new construction and new type of rehabs that we have to do to meet the state standards. That's the only differences that come into play this CIP improvement plan.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
I think we were at questions.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Faulkner is here, and one of the reasons he's here is that he did a great study about what the impact would be on the water and sewer rates in the users. And I thought that may be a potential source of funding, or currently is the only source of funding. He could speak more in depth on how the impact to the water and sewer users might be, based on what we're proposing to borrow from the SRF fund.
Yes, that'd be great. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you. This is Jeff Faulkner from Ty and Bond.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi. So about a year ago, we did a water and sewer rate study for the water and sewer departments, and that encompassed looking back at some expenditures and looking forward for future expenditures and revenue, with an eye on some needed projects the departments were looking at, specifically the ones that you're looking at now. And that was a rate study that projected out future rate increases to meet the capital needs. The Water and Sewer Board raised rates about a year ago for 2 quarters of fiscal 21 of 2020, and just recently have increased the rates in agreement with that rate study for FY21. The rate study a year ago took into account most of the projects that you see in front of you. What has newly come up is the PFAS issue. So we did anticipate a PFAS treatment plant a year ago. However, another water source has received a high value for PFAS. So the increase to the project to add that source to the treatment program is suggested to increase that capital project from, I believe it was 6.5 million a year ago to 11.5 million today. So that is currently not in the water rates program. So they would have to either consider raising their rates higher than projected, or some discussion with the other funding sources, mixed with the town general fund. If I could, I wasn't part of the first part of the meeting. So just to clarify, there are 4 town meeting articles that Ty and Bond is involved with relative to the Springtown meeting. And if I could just at least list those so you can engage me with any questions you have on those 4.
Okay.
Okay. So there's an interim well 7 PFAS treatment project. That is a $750,000 estimate. The water sewer had 350,000 from another project that was related, that they were able to move towards that project. But a supplemental appropriation of $400,000 is, I believe, what would be requested to fund that temporary PFAS treatment at well 7.
Okay.
The town has also received the notice that they're on the list for that PFAS treatment plant to be funded as another SRF project. And PFAS is a kind of a special type of project that they're handling this next couple of years because it is a new regulation. So there's even a special financing for that project in that normally the SRF program offers a 2% loan. In the case of this project, it would be a 0% loan over the 20-year payback period. In addition to that, the program also offers principal forgiveness. So the $11.5 million project would receive about 13.2% principal forgiveness. The third article that we're projecting on Springtown meeting is the design funds to design that treatment plant and the associated water main. The value of that's still in flux, but somewhere on the order of $600,000 to do the final design of the treatment plant and the water main that gets it from Station 1 to Station 6, and then back from Station 6 to the Station 1 area. The fourth item on town meeting is some really good news. So last August, I believe, the town submitted a grant application to prepare a water asset management plan for a value of $150,000. That application was approved, and that is also through the Mass DEP SRF program. And the way that would work is the town would front the full $150,000. However, 60% of that, so $90,000, would be grant money. $30,000 would be town cash, and $30,000 would be town employee time. So that $150,000 asset management report, which will guide the water department for a plan for the next 15, 20 years, will cost $30,000 to get a $150,000 report prepared. So
Excellent.
just wanted to make sure you were aware of those four key articles.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Yeah, I just kind of want to kind of go over the two requests for water, the blending and the new treatment center. I mean, obviously, we're looking at a cost that's astronomical for a treatment center. Not for a treatment center, but an astronomical cost there for a town. Is there any? These are extremely confusing regulations, and I've tried my best to read through the new regulations that were just issued, and they're literally incomprehensible to read them. I don't know who would know this stuff. They really are.
Yeah.
Nothing makes sense in these regulations. What the requirements of your municipality is supposed to do, what the testing process. It is just very confusing. To come up with this kind of money to put a treatment center in, whether or not that treatment center is going to guarantee that it's going to do the job it's supposed to do. Is there some sort of expert out there that we can get a hold of that can come in here and really explain this to us?
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I'll answer Mike's question there, because this is a new field even for the DEP, for the EPA,
Right.
for us water department personnel. I've gone through numerous meetings, DEP meetings, numerous conversations with the highest DEP people that supposed to be the experts. They're no experts. However, some background quickly, the water department first endeavor was to replace some wells at Station 1 and Station 3, especially at Station 3. We've only running 2 pumping stations right now. We're very close to critical status on our wells and our water supply. So when I initiated this last year, thank God we had a good head start on it. PFAS came into play, and as the requirement, and don't get confused with the October requirements for small systems coming online for the legal state limits. We fall under that immediately once new wells are put into place. It's something it's an underlying requirement. Thank God, in a way, we did that. Also, I know it sounds terrible, but we've endeavored on some very good help from DEP, some good funding, and some grants. And we got a head start on everything, more than other towns are going to get. The question about the testing of PFAS, it's very erratic. The problem with us being so erratic is that we're right on the cuff of the state limits. And unfortunately, it is what it is. We have to meet whatever the requirement is at 20 parts per trillion. We go over. And right now, well number 3, which is the one about to collapse, is at that level. But well number 7, which is the sister to it next on the other side of the building, has also covered around the 21 or 22. So the blending is temporary. It's 2 stations running together consecutively to keep the water level below the state limit, the PFAS level, because number 6 station is a lower level. What's only a temporary fix, the board has been and our engineer and myself have been proactive, and we're going into a further on to make it even better by putting a temporary vessel at the site of Station 3. I won't get into the whole logistics, but it's quite an operation. It's in the plan. It's in the CIP plan. It's to eliminate it together and also allow my station to run at full capacity while we wait to put another station online for new wells, which is in the progress now at Station 1, because my capacities will be very limited this summer. I'll be very nervous just to get through. It's something that DEP has worked with us with. We have to do it because we cannot meet the state limits where they have us right now without blending the water. You've seen the notices go out. There could be other notices going out only because our situation is that we're trying to get the well online, the new well online with the new PFAS temporary blending main, and the electrical panels don't quite match up, and it's been a delay because of that. But in about a week or so, we should be blending, or 2 weeks, we should be blending the water. And like I said, it's only temporary. I've asked your questions to DEP. I've asked your questions to just about every expert there is about why this, why that. They said it the way they said it. The state set the limits down to the 20. We feel it's very low, extremely low. I find the state to be reactive other than proactive, but that's the way it is. The EPA set theirs at 70. I thought 50 would have been a more fair value, but they decided to go and be heroes and make it 20 parts per trillion. If you look at a 600,000 gallon pool and put a droplet in there, that's about what you're looking at for what I'm talking about. I wish I could make you understand better on it, but it is mandated now. We fall under that state mandate. There's no question. We have to meet that need, or we have to go find other water source, which we can never do, or we'd have to intermix with Webster. And by the way, Webster has to test soon too. So we don't even know where they're going to end up being. Everybody up the line seems like they're getting into some kind of PFAS issue.
So let me interrupt. Let me translate for George, because he and I have been discussing this for almost 2 years now, back and forth. In order for us to repair a well or bring a well up online, we have to meet a certain requirement, a mandatory regulatory requirement. In order for us to repair our system, it's similar to a building permit. You open a wall and you find old wiring in that wall. It doesn't matter if your initial scope of work was to, expand the size of the room. You've got to replace all that wiring. So it's a domino effect. As much as we want to try and have been looking for ways to try to carve out what is the standard, what are we jumping the gun and trying to overregulate ourselves and spend too much money? That's not the case here. In order for us to have a backup water source. To bring a well that will serve as a backup in case one fails, you have to start meeting these certain regulations in order to bring that well online. So that's what we're up against now. And what we're up against now, like Mr. Mayotte said, is without question an enormous amount of money that needs to be spent on this project. And in my opinion, we're going to get around to it, but in my opinion, this amount of money that we're now required to spend in order to keep our infrastructure in solid is going to be probably too much for the water and sewer ratepayers to absorb through their bills. So the last time we had this discussion, we were at a certain amount. Jeff and the commissioners went through this study to see how much, depending on how we timed the repairs and how much and what type of repairs we did, how much of an increase that would mean to the ratepayers. We're well beyond that now. We're now looking for additional funding on top of what we've already talked about. And we're looking for funding that we must spend. It's not optional. It's an absolute requirement for us to move forward. And we're looking, and that amount of money is enormous. So we need to start looking at other ways in order for us to pay for this system beyond just putting it on everyone's water and sewer bill. That's not going to be sustainable. We're going to be in trouble, in plain English, over the course of the next decade if we don't figure out how to pay for this thing. So not to put too much pressure on the Capital Improvement Committee, but that's what we're looking at here tonight and going forward.
Thank you, sir. Water sewer good?
Yeah, if you have any other questions, we'll be glad to answer them, but I know there's a lot of material here. And it's a lot coming at everybody. I drew out the plan that I had in conjunction with the previous plan that I made with some variations, like I said, but everything flows pretty much as is. The only purchase that we're going to be going for the water department itself is just a new truck to replace a 15-year-old truck, which we need. Sewer, just quickly, is very simple. There's nothing much except the I&I project going on. They're going to be doing relining of sewer pipes that have been identified through the I&I program to correct those infiltration in those pipes. That's going to be ongoing from late spring to summer and beyond. Otherwise, sewer is pretty straightforward. We've already done lots of retrofit to stations, generators, things that they needed right away. So everything else down the pike becomes an issue of maybe another generator, some more station refits, and a new jetter, which is probably in the range of 150 or 200,000, somewhere in there. We have to look at that. The one we have is about a 1960 something. It's all band-aided up. So that's kind of the only thing with the sewer right now. They're in pretty good shape otherwise, truck-wise and that, just annual replacements.
Excellent. Excellent. Anybody have any questions or comments? If not, Mr. Administrator, you are next on the agenda for capital plan update.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Are we done with Mr. Faulkner?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, sir.
Jeff, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for signing on.
Sure.
Thank
Have
you,
a
Jeff.
good night.
Excellent time. You to stay safe.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, Mr. Administrator.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The HVAC system upgrades will start everybody, I'm sharing my screen, everybody should be able to see it. We had spoken about this initially. I think this was added to the plan and spoken about briefly. We've taken the first step in terms of upgrading the HVAC system. We did an evaluation. I was able to secure a grant last year where they began the evaluation of our current HVAC system and did some additional energy upgrades. And so I'm going to take another shot in October to submit for another Green Communities grant that will spell out and scope out what this work might look like. And then when we have that in hand, we could move forward with the project. So that's where that stands. I'm not going to ask for any additional funding outside of what's available through grants for that item. Next one on the list, ceiling tiles. So we were getting ready, Mr. Chairman, to reopen on March 29th. And we were going to meet about it this morning, and I walked into the meeting room and I heard a drip. And it was the condensate line leaking through the ceiling tiles, which, if everybody recalls, 100 years ago when we actually used to meet in person, if you look up at the ceiling, you'll notice that most of the ceiling tiles, because of past leaks, which have been repaired through the roof project and so forth, are buckled and not seated properly anymore in the grid work in the veterans meeting room, and fall out randomly during meetings, outside of meetings. Long story short, those need to be replaced. I'm getting a price. The highway superintendent is working on getting a price for the ceiling tiles. I think I may have some room in FY22 through an additional request through our legislators for that kind of money for certain projects that would improve maintain and improve some of the things that are in and around the DMC. So I'm not going to ask for any money for that particular item outside of what I can get through that funding source. Let's see what else. Municipal complex hazard mitigation. So the old Dye House is a property that was taken down, I don't know, I want to say 5 years ago, Rich. And there was some issues with asbestos and so forth that needed to be mitigated. We did mitigate those issues, and we're going to further make that a safer property. And there's actually discussion right now of turning that into a tricentennial park, where when Dudley celebrates its tricentennial, they want to open up a park in that area. We've got some work donated by a local contractor who's going to take care of a lot of that for us. And that's going to be through private fundraising sources. So that's not going to happen in 22. But for the time being, we've mitigated those asbestos issues, and I'm not seeking any additional funding for that line item right there. Maintenance on dams. That's an ongoing issue that I was reminded of again this morning when I received 3 orders from the DCR Department of Dam Safety, no pun intended, requiring us to provide inspection on some of our more critical donated dams that are most of which need to be either mitigated, repaired, or removed entirely. I've applied for grant funding through the Dam and Seawall Fund through our friends at Fuss and O'Neill, the engineering firm that handles our dam issues. So I'm seeking, and we likely will get some amount of money in 22 through a grant through the Dam and Seawall Fund to address that issue. So I'm not seeking any money outside of the grant funding source for that. And then I'm going to go back to highway because there was one item that we were going to move, Mr. Chairman, onto the municipal complex. And that was the new coating at the Richard Carmignani Senior Park, which is right here in the DMC parking lot. And that's going to be, I'm asking our state legislators to work on that cost. If you can believe it, the new coating for the rubberized mat at the bottom of the playground there, we got a price on that. We got several prices. The most competitive price to replace the rubberized matting in that park is $111,000, if you can believe it. So that's certainly not something that's coming out of the general fund, but I have an idea we may be able to have an additional source of funding through the state for that. So my requests are kind of boring this year. No I'm not looking for any general fund money or debt exclusion for the DMC at this point.
Okay,
I think we hit everything. That's 22.
okay. Great job. If anybody have any questions on that? If not, the next on the agenda is the fire department, who turned in a 5-year plan already. And like the chief said, they're not going for anything in 2022. So after that, it looks like the police department is next. And they had
Yeah.
something about, excuse
I
me.
asked, Mr. Chairman, I asked the police department if we could, just in the interest of time, I thought the water and sewer was going to last a little bit longer. So I told him that we I asked him to distribute some of the paraphernalia he had for the cruiser requests that he wanted the capital improvement committee to look at in advance of him presenting it. So he's going to go ahead and do that. And it's a pretty quick overview, but he'll be prepared to go over that at our next meeting, if that's all right.
Super. Okay. Any miscellaneous? If not, fiscal year 20 annual report you had down on the agenda?
Mm-hmm.
So Michelle, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. The annual report will be due pretty soon. I sent out an email a little while ago. I'm not really sure who's going to be compiling the information for that report this year. Mike Mayotte, you have done it in the past. If you want to help work with it, I'd be happy to
Sure.
help you out.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I'm available
Thank you.
to
Joe.
help with the report.
Outstanding.
So does anybody have any stamina left? Do you want to keep going, or should we go to the next, should we wait for next time? I'm going to make a suggestion.
Mr. Treasurer?
Going.
I'm waiting in anticipation of the town administrator's next move there. If anybody's paying attention, I've already altered that sheet once or twice. I've got a couple of minutes if you'd like to go through and review it. Obviously,
Mr. Chairman, if we, as you mentioned, maybe the committee would like to hear about what kind of debt we're retiring and what that means in terms of going forward, just to kind of think about over the course of the next week as we try to determine funding sources for these different items.
Okay.
that's my cue.
Yes.
You're all teed up.
Absolutely. Thank you. For some reason, I regret putting this together. Mr. Chairman, let's start very simply. Under the provisions of Proposition 2.5, we have for simpler terms, we have the amount raised in the previous year. We add 2.5% to it and our new growth. And that gives us what we can spend. Then we put our debt excluded money on it. So debt exclusion as opposed to an override. An override is a permanent increase to the tax rate. A debt exclusion is a finite increase to the tax rate. The value to a debt exclusion is there is specific money set aside for a project. If you take a look, you'll see center left, 6/13/2008. You'll see a project coming off. I put a yellow there, meaning we had some debt come off.
Okay.
That is our library building. So what I did, we had some debt coming off. Instead of making a 20-year issue, I made a 5-year issue, and we were able to pay that off early. Now, what happened in 14, if you look, there's another mark at 17, there's a mark in 2020. Anytime I put one of those marks, it said to me that we had a project ending and should have had another project to go with it. If you follow your line at the bottom, I took 2010 as just a number. That was my starting spot. I can go back to 5, probably go all the way back to 2000 if we need to. The idea of the exercise was the DE1 in 2010 was 1,681,891. What that means is, in addition to 2.5 in new growth, we paid for debt in that dollar amount. So for the next year, it actually increased. So if you look, the DE1 increased by 108%, but the following year was only 89%. And 99.61, so on and so forth. If you look, that bottom level, that bottom number, 9.57 was your tax rate in 2010. And then 11, it went up. And then it went up a little bit more and a little bit more. And you'll see, hey, wait a second, as you're starting to go, we go out to 17 and 18. We're down below 12 again. If you look to that center line where you started with 1,681,891, I did some simple math. If each year you started at year 0, and in this case is 2010, and we just added 2.5% to it, where would we be now? And the whole idea is you would spend a similar dollar amount or 2.5 more each time on a project. So instead of having, if you were to graph all of this, it would look like a lightning bolt because we'd be up and down, up and down. You see my reds in there. You've actually lost money. You've had debt retired and you haven't replaced it. So when we have our discussions about should it be debt excluded, you're basing this on a theory. When Standard & Poor's, Moody's, Fitch, they go through and they give the broad view. You have an analyst come in and says, how is Dudley doing? This is one of the barometers. They have gone through and they have maximized their ability to purchase things through debt exclusions. If you go through and graph some of these, we did a good job, but then we dropped the ball in 14. It's real easy for the CIP and the FAA to go through and say, hey, wait a second, Mr. Chairman, we need to have X amount of dollars to go in here to continue with that level debt. Unfortunately, a debt exclusion vote needs to take place. We need to have it come from the FAA, the CIP, the Board of Selectmen, all in agreement to put it on the ballot and to get the positive vote that says this is what the townspeople want to spend their money on in excess of the constraints of Proposition 2.5. So this is a good tool that tells us what we bought and what we could have bought and hypothetically where we are. The more you start to work with numbers, the more you can see the gap widen or decrease. I've gone through and I've clicked into a few things, the accumulated, the projected gain or loss throughout the year with nothing is about 241,000. And then you're going to see the debt come off in 23 and 24, which brings us up to 930,000. That's all things being equal and not taking any steps back, that's $1 million project that we've sort of left on the table. Reasonably, if we go across starting at 2010, running it all the way out to 2024, the DE1 should be up somewhere in the vicinity of 2.376 million, which would have given us another $1.6 million to spend. Again, it's an academic exercise, but I can put real numbers to this and state this is where we should be or be close to there. So when we go through and get our bond rating, we can go through and say, we've maximized our revenues under 2.5, and we've taken advantage of special projects by debt excluding them. It's an unpopular concept because anytime the DE1 goes up, it means all of the properties in the town of Dudley are going to spend a little bit more. In theory, 2.5 every year and an additional increase of 2.5, or call it 1%, 2%, 5%. The idea is to minimize all those peaks and valleys. It's to have a slow and steady increase. And that, I think, is a good scenario. It's numbers driven. There's no treasurer goal for this. There's no capital item that I'm trying to get through. It's just a good visual that says this is sort of the path of where we were and where we are now, because the most important thing that you can get out of this, if you go all the way to the right, you're going to see this building. There's $400,000 that's going to come off the DE1 predictably in 2023, and we should be replacing it with something in 2024. What should it be? I don't know, but to keep tight to a plan, we should have something. And
So
that's
part
one
of
of the,
so I'm going to let you off the hook for a sec, Rich, and I appreciate you putting this together for me. I actually asked Rich to put this together so that I could, for one reason, so we can be transparent as to what we're talking about. It's one thing to have the concept of debt excluding, debt excluding, debt excluding, and trying to verbalize it. But when you can put it on the screen here and actually take a look at it and show that, there's a reason that we have a plan that shows what we're spending or what we project to spend every year. It's because it naturally, the puzzle pieces fall together that we can do it with a logical, common sense way where we're retiring debt. Well, we know we're going to need at some point windows. We're going to need a roof replacement. We're going to need to buy new dump trucks. We're going to have other issues. So we plan it out accordingly and replace debt, and we take it easy on the taxpayer instead of saying we kept taxes low for 5 years. Everybody got a sense of, wow, the tax is so low, and then all of a sudden we go through the roof because everybody was afraid to replace debt, going down and down and down. Every time we see one of these yellow marks, that was a missed opportunity to replace debt and to do this in a way that's manageable for the taxpayer, as opposed to a roller coaster ride for the taxpayer. And when he talks about Moody's and the way we're looked at in terms of our bond rating, he's right. They look and see how does the town of Dudley manage their funds? Do they have something that will prevent a ginormous water and sewer infrastructure replacement plan? Are they consistently fixing things as they go along and replacing things? And if so, that shows good financial management. If they're just saying no, 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 no over and over again until you're at catastrophic levels and you need to borrow a ton of money and put that back on the taxpayers, then it impacts the rating. This is a methodical, a practical way to manage our financial needs where we can't meet that obligation through the general fund. And we all know that we can't, but we have to continue to have a good, sound capital improvement plan and replace that as we go along. to ignore what is obvious here. What's obvious is our tax rates go down. We don't replace that. They go down further. They go down further. They go down further. There's a catastrophe. They go through the roof. This is the simple way to manage and turn this spreadsheet into something that actually translate into sound fiscal policy by managing our tax rate, managing our debt, managing our expenses. So I appreciate Rich, particularly this year, putting this together for me and allowing me to present it and allowing it to be brought out and kind of show the public what we're thinking about and how we're trying to get a hold of expenses and to plan for the future and to give these committees, the Capital Improvement Committee, the FAA, and the Board of Selectmen, an overview of a better way to do things going forward. So in order to make our capital improvement plan a reality and a real thing, this is a key element. This is 50% of our plan. There's one thing to say, yes, we want to buy it. Yeah, we'll debt exclude it. Yeah, we'll find the source of funding. Yeah, we need it. But it's an entirely different thing to say, yeah, and we have a plan to pay for it. And this is it. This is where we need to be looking. So I guess that's my spiel for tonight. I appreciate, Rich, you putting this together for us and explaining it in the way that you can only explain it. And I think I've laid it out on the table.
Excellent job. Yeah, that is one of the things for the Capital Improvement Committee to be looking at. The financial impact is just one of a few. And to understand it helps out when we give a recommendation to move forward, when the voting members vote on it, and then we move forward. This is what's going to be. This is what we say, yes or no. So I understand what you're talking about earlier about the source of funding a little later, but getting everything now. That makes it a lot clearer. And that was a great explanation by both. And I appreciate that. And thank you.
Everybody mad at me now?
No, no.
Yeah, I believe everybody should be mad at the town administrator for,
Oh. No, everybody did a great job. If anybody has any questions.
so I will verbalize it because, you know, there is the elephant in the corner of the room. On the DE1, there is a line for capital for the sewer department. Not really, but it is a general fund line item that goes through the treasurer collector's budget, my budget, and is paid directly to Webster. So there is a portion of the sewer operation that is paid for by a debt exclusion. So somebody who lives at the far end of town and does not receive sewer service, part of their taxes are going through and doing it, are paying for part of the capital. The reason that was brought forward was your sewer project, your water project, whatever is on there has a benefit to the business in town. Whether it's a pizza parlor, whether it's a new gas station, whether it's expansion at a school, whatever it's going to be, a rising tide is going to lift all the ships. And that's one of the reasons that they did that. Right now, it's a rather modest amount when you figure whatever there is, 4,800 properties in the town of Dudley. Could you do it for a PFAS mitigation plant or a portion of it? The answer is yes, you could. If you go through, I'm not going to be the one that says you can't, you should or shouldn't. Technically, you can. And that's something that can be done. And it's an option. Do your quick math. If you're If you have an $11.5 million project and it's 13.2% principal forgiveness, and you're spreading it out over 20 years at 0%, you're still, what, $419,000 a year off of a $1.1 million per year budget. You need some relief. That's a different discussion. I'm not a water sewer commissioner, but a quick back of the envelope calculation says rates need to go up, or there needs to be another option for funding. And again, between the water sewer superintendent speaking, Jeff Faulkner, who's an engineer, this is something we need to do. And then it's another discussion to say who should be borne by this. We're not looking to debt exclude something that only handles a few people. This is a giant issue that starts federally. But to be able to work a portion of that in, or all of it, is worthy of consideration. And numerically, I think we could put something together that would be palatable for everyone. And that's sort of where I'd leave it. Yes, you can. It has been done. It could be done. Thank you.
Excellent job. Thank you, sir. Thank you. If anybody else doesn't have any questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Yes, hi. So just kind of going forward for capital improvement, I know, the town meeting is going to be coming up real soon. Warrant articles going to be submitted and stuff. I would just like to see, I know as far as the highway department's concerned, their number one request is that brine system. I would like to kind of see some bids on the brine system, maybe 2 or 3 bids on that to see what options there on that system. Also, a little bit of information as to why we would want to add this, what kind of cost savings there is, and stuff like that. So I'd kind of like to see that. And I know there's some dump trucks. I'd like to see some bids out on the dump trucks if we're going to go forward with that.
Okay.
Also on the water and sewer, this is a big one. I would definitely need to see, for myself anyway, some bids on the water treatment type of facility that's going to be put in. What kind of guarantees on this treatment facility there are to get the PFAS levels below where they're supposed to be. So I like to see some documentation on that. I also like to see a little bit more documentation other than just, us talking here on, the process in which we determined that we have to treat this. In other words, I'd like to see, what was all the testing? How's the testing being done? The frequency of the testing. We're on the borderline here, it looks like to me, in terms of this PFAS level. So I'd kind of like to see a little bit more factual data as to the amount of testing that's been done, the frequency, and get a little bit more of an explanation as to how these regulations work and what the obligations of these towns are. More in writing or documented than just in conversation. So that's what I'd like to see. So
Where would you like to see the writing and documents from?
I really don't know.
Town level, state level, federal level?
Well, obviously
We can certainly provide, we did a public outreach session with the DEP, and that was on Zoom. We can provide access to the bid openings, which got postponed today, right, George?
Yep.
We have bid openings. We went out, everything's going out to competitive bid.
Some of the documentation he's looking for what the actual bidding for treatment is way off yet. We're only in the development stages for permitting and for getting the architectural plans going for this treatment center. So that's not going to really be something we can get right away. The other information, we have sampling that we have required to do monthly. We have those statistics. what you do with that, if you understand them, is one thing, but if you don't understand them, then
Well,
that's
that's what I mean, George. This is very complex.
yeah.
You are far more of an expert than I am on this. I try to do my research. I just, we're talking a lot of money here for the town.
I could actually.
I just
Mike,
think it's prudent for all of us to really understand the regulations. I know you probably understand them a lot better than I do. But they are very confusing. There is a lot of mitigation stuff that can be done. That I see in the regulations. So I just want to make sure that we're actually putting an $11 million treatment center in that we have to.
I think the best result would be if I come to the meeting or through the phone and have you talk directly to the regional director regarding this, Mary Prude, who was on the last meeting we had a couple meetings ago, and that she can answer all your questions statewide, state level.
Okay, fantastic.
As to what's going on with this, because I can give you all the paperwork in the world, but with all that's going on, you still say, oh, geez, I'm still lacking the confidence of what I'm spending here. But I think the possibility would be bring her on board at a time or a place, whether it be, in a phone conversation where you can ask these questions as a board and get the answers you're looking for. That, I could talk all day long, but coming from DEP.
Thank you. Yeah, I would appreciate that. That would be great.
I'll try to make
I don't want to question anything, your knowledge and your what you want. That's not what my position is to do, is to question that. It just seemed like we're so close. 21 parts, 20 parts.
Yeah, and Mike, I did have a conversation with her regarding that. They understand the situation we're in. We're on the razor's edge, but those levels are going to change again and again and again. And I can't sit there and justify that all of a sudden we're at 19 and all of a sudden we jump to 23 and then we have to stop everything and try to go for treatment and then we back. It just doesn't work like that. They have to rely on what we have as an average throughout the course. Like I said, about that, and go with those averages. And right now our averages are up, and to be not smart and just hope that we can tweedle on the line on the low side it's not fathomable. We couldn't even do that.
I absolutely agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. Exactly. You don't want to not do it if it's there, but I would like to see the numbers so that I can say, hey, this is, we really have to do this. We're following the regulations the way they're set out, which are very confusing. And we're doing what we need to do. I would just hate to spend $11 million on a treatment center, and so.
Why don't we do it in the form of another public hearing outside of the CIP, and then, because I agree with Mr. Mayor, it's not just him recommending that we do it this way. We've got to get the vote if we decide to do it this way.
Right. You're also going to convince the taxpayers to vote on an 11 million. And you know how difficult the fire station was on the first one. So it's a difficult thing. $11 million is a lot of money.
Mr. Kanatsky, did you have a question?
I do. So if this is a mandated project, I had to swap devices, so I kind of missed probably the crux of this conversation. But the mandated project, what is the date and timeline that they want this done by?
Can I speak?
Thank you.
Sir.
Yes, just to answer some of that, we currently are having a pilot study being done. We shipped out about 500 gallons of Dudley water to a lab, to a vendor, and they are putting it through their filtration system to prove that it will work. We will have that report, I believe, in June. The other thing, when you're talking about these levels, our levels are, you're right, are testing right around 20 parts per trillion. There are other communities that are testing around 1,000 parts per trillion. So, they're in really deep issues, those communities, and they have been for a number of years. So if you have a sweep of 10, when you're talking about 1,000, so you're going from 1,010 to 990, there's no difference, basically no difference. But when you're down around 20, or say you're at 30 and you're at 20 and you sweep by 10, that goes from 10 to 30. There's a large difference, and that's where we're running into a problem. We're hovering at the edge, and every time we test, we're a little bit above, we're a little bit below, we're a little bit above, we're a little bit below. They're averaging. Our average right now is at 21. That's our average. This month, we're going to see what happens. I don't think it's going to get us below 20. We're working with the DEP to see about whether or not we're going to have to report or not. I think they're going to work with us. We'll see. But what was Paul's question again?
I think, Mr. Chairman, he wanted to know if it was what the due date to have all this into compliance. So there is a due date, I know that much, but it's an ongoing thing. It's forever.
Yeah, it's not like
Okay,
we
I
have
mean-
to have it done by X date.
Okay.
But we are at a position where, like with well 7, the new well down on Schofield Ave, and well 8, which is the new main station, they have come right out and said it. They will not allow any water with a level above 20 parts per trillion flow into our water system. Won't allow it. So neither one of those stations will come online if they're above 20.
So I
Period.
guess our deadline is now.
Yes, they're allowing us to blend to try to get the level down. Now think about this. Station 6 is pumping down up Schofield Ave. Station 3 is pumping into Schofield Ave. They're blending. They're already blending. So, but we can't measure that. There's no way to measure it. So we're going to blend. That's only a temporary fix, but what that does, that could be a permanent fix, except it drops our production down considerably, down to a level that's not sustainable. So now we've got to treat. Developing a treatment plant takes a couple of years. That's a 3-year process, 2 to 3 year process. In the meantime, we want to put this temporary plant at Station 3 so that we can get Station 3 treated. Maybe I'm sure we won't get it down to 0 parts per trillion, but if we can get it down to 2 or 3, we'll be in great shape. And then Station 3 can just run as it has been, and that will alleviate some of the production pressure that we're under right now. In the meantime, when does it have to be done? As long as we keep moving in a forward progression, DEP will work with us and assist us to get to where we need to get. But that we have to keep moving forward. If we start saying, hey, you know what, we're just going to wait and see. They may not continue to play nice with us. It's hard to tell. We have to kind of work together at this. Other communities, our neighbors to the east, are just getting ready to start testing. And I'd be interesting to see what their numbers look like, with the fact that they had Cranston Print Works working right in the middle of their town for many years. And they had all kinds of plants out there that may have been dealing with that kind of chemical. All those years of having a fire muster at the beach, spreading firefighting foam on the ground. I'm really going to be interested to see what their numbers look like. And that'll give us a little perspective for our area. Other towns out near where the fire, towns of Sudbury and Hudson are having real problems because of in some
Well, they're
cases,
gonna love you with these towns, let me tell you.
Fire Academy, or up around Fort Devens. The
Okay,
towns up
good
around
enough.
Fort Devens are the ones that are popping 1,000. They're popping numbers up in the 4 digits. that's big numbers, big money to spend to fix.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir,
We're just working forward.
just one quick answer to Paul's question. I don't know if it's been answered or not. It's for what is done is depends on what wells we activate and what level those wells come at. If we're over, we're over, we have to treat. If we're under, we don't have to treat. But as you can see, with what wells we do have, they're already committed for treatment due to the fact that there is some. So I'll leave it at that.
Right.
It just answers it. We're still working on everything right now. So everything is a work in progress.
Mr.
excellent.
Chairman,
Sir,
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a comment. I want to thank George for letting us know that there is somebody out there besides just us here that can kind of explain all the regulations and maybe kind of walk this through, make us feel a little better at doing, or at least make me feel better, and to kind of answer and maybe, the information that Scott was saying about timeframes and when to do it. See, this is where I end up getting confused because I read the regulations and it doesn't say to be done now. So that's why I appreciate that we may be able to get an expert in here. Because to be honest with you, I've got the regulation. Anybody can see it. I mean, I can show it to you. It says straight out. It says municipalities with 50,000 or fewer, but greater than 10,000 individuals. Testing begins compliance for April 1st, 2021.
The issue that arises.
I don't want to get into a debate on it. I just want to say there's a lot of this information in the regulations that are very unclear as to, and there's a lot on continuing testing once you detect it for quarterly testing. This can go on for several years. So that's why I'm very confused about that. Very confused about that all of a sudden a year later we're putting a well in without having all this knowledge. So I do appreciate the fact that there may be somebody who can really explain how this all works in the process, because I'm very confused on why we would need to do this.
The reason we're on the hook is because we put a new well number 8 down at Schofield Ave. Number 7 at Schofield Ave and well number 8 on West Main Street.
I get it. I get it, Scott. I don't want to, I'm not trying to, debate. This is not a debate. I just would like
I'm not
more
debating. I'm telling you the truth.
No, I believe, again, I believe you. It's just, I would like to see more information from somebody that can really explain the regulations that don't countermand what we say here. So
we'll have Jonathan set up something and I'll get a hold of her and we'll arrange for a meeting. So all you guys can ask your questions. She's more willing to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. She is.
okay. That sounds good. If anybody else doesn't have anything.
I got a headache.
You have a headache.
At least you got hair on your head.
I got heartburn.
Been living this stuff over a year.
I think Mike made it pretty clear. So on all this, if the committee members, since we do have these emails now, if we can get all the information everybody's gone over and the charts to review them, digest them, read them, call back with any questions, then we can move forward and have another meeting in the future, better prepared to ask questions or better understand the requests and the priorities to move them forward fast.
Mr. Chairman, one quick other thing, other than PFAS, it's not PFAS related.
Okay.
Just to Mike's question, there were also 3 bids made on that truck that we're requesting from 3 different dealers. And the local dealer was very low at like 41.7. So just for the rest, the only reason for my request is for equipment and toolboxes or whatever else we need. That's all. So just to say, we got everything he needs if he needs it.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to
So
adjourn?
moved.
No? Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Roll call vote. You need a roll
Yeah.
call vote.
George Petrinos, aye.
Thank you.